In our money lead, the Russian war against Ukraine, 5,000 miles away, is having a direct financial impact here in the United States after a global market plunge. A volatile day in the U.S., the Dow finishing up 92 points, but that's a major rebound after diving 800 points at one point this earlier today. And after Putin's invasion, Russia's main financial index dropped 45%. That's almost half by closing. I want to bring in CNN global economic analyst Rana Foroohar, who's an associate editor at the Financial Times. And Rana, this is the third straight day this week that the U.S. stocks finished down. I guess they did tick up a bit at the end there. What does that mean for the folks watching who have 401ks and investments?
Well, it means strap in. We are in for a long period of volatility due to what's going on in Ukraine. You saw stocks dip, Jake, because of fears of inflation. Energy inflation is poised to rise. There's no question about that. But then, of course, Biden came out and said, look, we're going to go into the strategic energy reserves. We're going to release some of those to try and keep gas prices down. That calmed markets a bit. In general, I think that you're going to see stocks being very volatile because of worries over a recession. How much is consumer demand going to be affected by all this? The final point to consider, though, is that prior to the Ukraine conflict, we had been looking to see several rate hikes this year, which would dampen stock prices. Now, people are wondering, is the Fed going to do that? Maybe stocks are going to stay a little higher because rates are going to, the rate hikes may not come as quickly as we thought. So a lot going on in the markets.
As Americans lose money in stocks, they're also paying more on everyday items due to the inflation you mentioned. If this conflict continues, this war, is there any way that the U.S. financial market could ultimately be spared?
It's interesting, Jake. It's a big question mark. On the one hand, you could see a scenario in which things are so bad in Europe that the U.S., as is often the case in conflict, becomes kind of the cleanest dirty shirt out there. U.S. stocks are, U.S. citizens actually are not going to be impacted in the same way that Europeans are by this war. So it's possible that could keep stocks up. On the other hand, if you start to see Chinese buying more Russian oil, more of a sort of an interlocking sanction rebound, from the Chinese, saying we're going to support Russia, that could create trouble for the U.S. It's really hard to tell right now. And I just think that investors should not be thinking about selling or making any quick moves at the moment.
Obviously, one of the big issues going on right now is that Europe gets almost 40% of its fuel, its energy from Russia. Does this mean that this war will further impact the price of oil here in the United States, therefore making it more expensive to heat our homes, not to mention prices at the pump?
100%. And as I said, Biden is trying to kind of tampen down those worries by saying, look, we have these strategic reserves. We will open them up further if need be. But Jake, oil is a global market. Russia has a lot of it. Taking that off the market globally is going to impact prices. No question. I would not be surprised if you see a pretty sharp uptick in energy inflation. All
right, Rana Foroohar, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As Russian forces move further into Ukraine, we are already seeing a steady flow of evacuees leave Ukraine, crossing the border into Poland. CNN's Scott McLean is in Poland near a checkpoint. And Scott, once evacuees from Ukraine get to the Polish side of the border, then what? Where do they go?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes they know people over here in Poland, Jake. Sometimes they're just trying to find a hotel. Others are trying to make it to the airport in Warsaw. We've heard all kinds of differing stories. I just want to set the scene for you where exactly we are right now. So this is the path that leads from the border. This is a pedestrian crossing. You can also cross here in cars as well. And so the actual border checkpoint is where you see those lights over there. And the reason why people are kind of coming through at a trickle is not because there's not very many of them, but because it's taking a very long time to get through the border. The Polish side is relatively quick. They're letting Ukrainians through no problem, but the Ukrainians, we've heard from several people, are taking quite a long time to get through. Nearly everyone that we've talked to has told us some version of the same story, and that's that they didn't think that there was going to be conflict in Ukraine. They thought that Putin was bluffing, and then when they woke up this morning and heard the news, or maybe heard the explosions, that's when they packed their bag, put their family in the car or in a taxi or on a train, and got out of Dodge. Here's how one woman described it.
it's awful. You have to act, guys. You next. I mean, maybe not America, but Poland, other countries of Europe need to act immediately. It's not normal. Those people stand 7 hours with a baby on a border.
Sorry, let me just flip around here and show you a little bit more. So a bus just left here carrying people to go pick people up, presumably from the border checkpoint. And there have been minibuses, cabs coming in here all throughout the day. Let me just show you the rest of the scene here, Jake, if I can. Mark, I'll just get you to scoot through and not trip. So there's people kind of lining up, trying to figure out what they're going to do here. Some people are, again, trying to find a ride. They're trying to link up with a bus. They're hearing things about maybe there's a bus going to Warsaw. Maybe they're going to another town. Other people are trying to get to Warsaw so that they can catch a flight somewhere else. There's exchange shops here. There's a little restaurant here. There's a hotel back there that you're not going to find a room at. So people are struggling to find a place to live. Poles, I should say as well quickly, Jake, they are also preparing for this. In the towns that we came through on the way to the border, you saw very, very long lines, some 20, 30 cars long, because they're stocking up on fuel because they just simply don't know what's going to happen.
And for people who are wondering, well, why didn't these Ukrainians leave earlier, we should remember and remind our viewers that the leaders of Ukraine, President Zelensky on down, trying not to have panic, tried to reassure the public that Russia was not actually going to invade and attack, and ultimately they were wrong. Scott McLean reporting from the Polish side of the Ukrainian border. Scott, thank you so much. President Biden announcing what he calls significant sanctions on Russia, but how much of a difference will they make when the Russians are already bombing Ukrainian cities? We're going to go live on the ground to Russia and to Ukraine. That's next. Stay with us.
I didn't know you were a fan.
It's